There are places within you that sunlight has never touched, silent corridors, where the echoes of forgotten choices sleep. We spend our lives decorating the surface of ourselves, polishing the mirror. Yet beneath the glass, something ancient watches. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Not evil, not demonic, simply the unlit half of the human soul. Everything you have denied, every impulse you've disowned, every truth you have buried under the performance of being good. It waits. We think freedom is light, but the light blinds us when we refuse to see what it reveals. The shadow is not the enemy of light, it is the texture that gives light its meaning. Without night, the stars are invisible. Without pain, compassion is hollow. Without the shadow, consciousness is incomplete. There is a moment in every honest life, a pause, subtle but absolute, when the masks we have worn begin to crack. The image we have built cannot carry the weight of what we are. We sense it in exhaustion, in shame, in quiet self-betrayal. We smile while something beneath us trembles. We say we are fine, but a deeper voice whispers, liar. The shadow is that voice. It speaks the words your pride cannot. It remembers what your mind has exiled. And though we run from it, through work, through distraction, through endless light, it never stops following. To meet your shadow is not to descend into darkness. It is to turn toward what has always been calling your name from the dark. The forgotten anger, the jealousy, the lust, the fear. These are not poisons to be purged. They are lost children waiting to come home. Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is not what makes us bad. It is what makes us real. It is the ground on which the soul learns to stand without illusion. Freedom begins the moment you stop running from yourself. Not when you conquer the shadow, but when you turn and listen. Somewhere within that listening, in that trembling silence, where the light first touches the dark, you awaken. The mirror is no longer decoration. It is a doorway, and on the other side of it, the self you were always meant to meet is waiting. Most of us are raised to fear what we feel. We learn early that anger must be hidden, desire must be restrained, sadness must be fixed. We are taught to wear the language of light, to be kind, optimistic, productive, calm. And so, we build a house of mirrors, every wall reflecting only what we are willing to see. But a life made of reflection soon becomes a cage. Each smile, rehearsed, each virtue displayed, tightens the mask until the skin beneath can no longer breathe. The world rewards the polished image, the curated self, yet beneath the applause, something ancient begins to ache. You know that feeling, when silence grows unbearable, when laughter feels rehearsed, when your own name sounds foreign in your mouth. You can sense it, the weight of lived truth pressing against your ribs. This is repression, not the absence of darkness, but the violence of pretending it isn't there. In the modern age, repression wears a holy disguise. We call it positivity. We worship calmness, chase productivity, chase light. But this relentless brightness burns the soul. We become actors under a spotlight, terrified of the shadows of stage. The more we perform perfection, the more hollow our triumphs sound. Look closer at your own reflection. Can you see the cracks, the anger you never voiced, the envy that shames you, the grief that never found words? Each is a fracture in the mirror, a place where truth is trying to enter, and yet we patch it over with smiles. We say, it's fine. We post, grateful. We drown the whispers beneath noise and neon. But the shadow is patient. It moves beneath your calm voice and polished habits. It waits in the body, in the tension behind your eyes, the tightness in your chest, the dreams you can't explain. It finds you in moments of unexpected fury, when a small insult burns too hot, when jealousy strikes without warning. These are not failures. They are messages, flares from the unconscious, calling you to turn inward. Because repression does not destroy what is hidden, it only drives it deeper, where it grows roots in the dark. Jung warned that the shadow, when denied, does not vanish, it takes control. We become hypocrites, preaching virtues we secretly violate, judging in others what we cannot face in ourselves. We condemn the very thing that reflects us. You can see it everywhere, in the politician who crusades against corruption while feeding on it, in the spiritual teacher who hides behind purity while craving power, in each of us when we mock weakness but secretly fear our own. The world is full of shadows projected outward, because few dare to hold their own. And so, humanity circles endlessly. In wars, in moral outrage, in addiction. Not because we are evil, but because we are asleep. The first awakening is painful, because it demands honesty. It demands you stand naked before your own reflection and admit what you see. No more excuses, no more pretending. When the mirror finally shatters and light and shadow spill together across the floor, you will tremble. You will think you are breaking, but you are not breaking, you are beginning. Because what waits beneath repression is not ruin. It is truth, and that truth, once faced, will lead you to revelation. There comes a moment, quiet, almost sacred, when denial can no longer hold. When the storm of contradictions inside you demands to be seen, it feels like collapse. But it is not destruction, it is revelation. Carl Jung believed that the human soul seeks wholeness, not perfection. Perfection divides. It amputates everything that does not fit the image. Wholeness embraces. It gathers the broken pieces and says, you too belong. This is the paradox of light and darkness. The more we chase purity, the more fragmented we become. The more we dare to look into the night within, the more luminous our being becomes. You see, the shadow is not a monster, it is the guardian of the gate, and that gate opens only to those who approach it with humility. Inside your darkness lies everything you once rejected, your selfishness, your rage, your lust, your envy, but also your vitality, your passion, your creativity, your courage. The same fire that burns can also illuminate. What you suppress as sin may hold the seed of your strength. Jung wrote that the shadow is 90% pure gold. Hidden behind every flaw is the energy of life itself, raw, untamed, waiting for consciousness to shape it. When you integrate that force, you do not become darker, you become whole. To face your shadow is to look into a mirror without judgment. It is to see the full architecture of your being, the saint and the sinner, the coward and the hero, and recognize that they are one. The Stoics knew this too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive." But he also reminded himself daily of cruelty, deceit, and weakness. Not to condemn, but to understand that these two are part of the human condition. The wise do not divide the world into angels and demons. They see that both dwell within the same heart. This realization changes everything. When you meet your shadow, you begin to understand others. The arrogance softens. The desire to judge fades, because you see, truly see, that every human being is fighting a silent war within. Some drown in it, some run from it. Some, the bravest few, learn to listen. Imagine standing at dawn, the horizon split between night and light. The shadow stretches before you, but the sun rises behind. You realize they are not enemies. The shadow only exists because of the light. Without the light of consciousness, there would be no darkness to see. They are twins, bound by the mystery of existence itself. This is the heart of Jung's philosophy. The shadow is not against you. It is you, the half you exiled in order to survive, the child who learned to hide, the voice that whispered no when you were told to say yes, the fire you deemed to be loved. To integrate the shadow is to welcome that exile home, not by indulging it, but by understanding it. Not by becoming darkness, but by letting darkness speak its truth. You sit with it, you listen, and in that listening, you begin to see the pattern. Every envy hides a longing, every anger hides a boundary, every fear hides a wound that was once love. Integration is the act of giving these parts their place, not as rulers, but as voices in the council of the soul. And when all voices are heard, when nothing within you is denied, a new harmony begins to form. You feel it like dawn, breaking through your chest, a quiet peace that has nothing to prove. The war inside you dissolves. You stop fighting to be good. You begin to simply be. This is the revelation. Light is not the absence of darkness. It is the courage to stand in both. It is the wholeness that comes when you stop editing your humanity. And from this union of opposites, from this marriage of light and shadow, the soul is reborn. What follows is no longer theory. It is transformation. Transformation begins not in grand gestures, but in quiet, unseen moments of honesty, when you stop arguing with what you feel and start listening. Integration is not a spiritual victory, It's an act of humility. It means admitting, I am not who I pretend to be, and I am not only what I fear. It means turning toward the parts of yourself you once banished and saying, you can stay. This is where the real work begins, in the slow conversation between light and dark. When anger rises, do not condemn it. Ask what it protects. When envy burns, do not drown it in guilt. Ask what it reveals about your unlived desires. When fear freezes you, do not fight it. Ask what it is trying to preserve. The shadow does not need punishment. It needs translation. It speaks in emotion, in dreams, in the instinct. Its language is ancient. To understand it is to reclaim your humanity. Every moment of irritation, every surge of shame is an invitation to awareness. The more you face these visitors with openness, the less they need to scream. That is transformation, not erasing the shadow, but softening the distance between you and it. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward becoming an undivided self. It is not a path of perfection, but of honesty. When you integrate the shadow, your relationships begin to change. Because projection ends. You no longer demand others carry what you refuse to face. The lover is no longer your mirror of approval. The friend is no longer your moral confessor. You begin to meet people as they are, because you are finally meeting yourself as you are. In leadership, the integrated person stands differently. They do not hide behind charisma or righteousness. They act from clarity, not compensation. They have nothing to prove, and that makes them trustworthy. Their authority does not come from dominance, but from self-knowledge. In solitude, you discover another kind of peace. The silence that once felt heavy becomes a companion. You realize that solitude is not loneliness. It is communion with what was once unseen. Marcus Aurelius said, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. That retreat is only possible when the soul is reconciled with itself. When light and dark no longer quarrel, silence becomes sanctuary, not exile. And yet, this work never ends. The shadow evolves as you do. Each new stage of life casts new shapes in the dark. Integration is not a final state. It is a rhythm, a dance between awareness and forgetting, between descent and return. Sometimes you will stumble. You will find yourself reacting, judging, repeating the old patterns you thought you had transcended. Do not despair. Each failure is the shadow reminding you. Growth is not linear, it spirals. You will return to the same lessons until they are not lessons anymore, but wisdom embodied. So walk gently with your darkness. Hold your contradictions with compassion, because everything you reject in yourself waits to serve your wholeness. In the end, the shadow becomes your ally. It keeps you honest when ego tempts you to ascend too high. It grounds you when light blinds you with pride. It reminds you that true strength is tenderness toward all that is human within you. Transformation is not becoming something new. It is remembering who you were before you learned to be ashamed. And as you remember, as you begin to live from that unity, you will notice something subtle but profound. The world itself begins to mirror your peace, because the moment you reconcile the war within, you stop fueling the wars without. There is a silence that comes after truth, not the silence of emptiness, but of completion. When the storm has passed, when the mirror has shattered and reformed, you find yourself standing in the same world. But everything has changed. The colors are quieter now. The air feels heavier, more honest. You breathe differently. You see people, not as characters in your story, but as travelers carrying their own shadows. You no longer need to prove your goodness. You no longer need to chase the light, because you have seen what light truly is. Not the absence of dark, but its embrace. This is freedom, not the escape from your nature, but the reconciliation with it. Freedom is the still point where your contradictions learn to coexist. The shadow no longer haunts you. It walks beside you, like an old friend who once terrified you, but now keeps you grounded. You begin to notice beauty in imperfection, in the scar that tells a story, in the flaw that reveals depth, in the pause between breaths where the soul speaks. Nothing needs to be erased anymore. You see that life, like you, was never meant to be spotless. It was meant to be whole. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And yet, once you do, terror dissolves into tenderness. You no longer fight to be loved. You become love itself, not sentimental, but steadfast, rooted in the truth of who you are. The Stoics would call this serenity, the mystics call it union. Jung called it individuation, but names don't matter. What matters is the stillness you feel when the mask falls away, and you realize there is nothing left to hide. You understand now, the shadow was never a curse, it was a doorway. And on the other side of that door, freedom waits, not as a prize, but as a homecoming. The journey ends where it began, in the quiet, within the self, and as you stand there, light and dark intertwined, no longer two, but one, you hear the soul whisper, you were never broken, you were only divided, and now you are whole. The shadow is not the enemy, the shadow is the gate, and through it you have found a way home.